Greetings! Thanks for joining me once again as I take a wee irreverent look at Scottish politics. You could be forgiven for not being aware because it's not been in the news that much, but the Labour Party in Scotland has a new chief. The previous boss, someone called Johann Lamont, gave their statutory 30 seconds notice last year and a new boss was anointed by Westminster. And I have that man on the show today. Now, he's very shy and tends to avoid the limelight, rarely ever appearing on TV or in the papers. But he's here now. It's the Right Reverend St James of Murphy. It's a pleasure to have you on, would be a flat out lie. Speaking of which, during this interview, you'll be hooked up to the iRight 2000, a state-of-the-art lie detector, something of my own design and has a variable setting, which I'll just put to Labour now. And if at any point it detects you lying, alarms will sound and you'll be instantly placed on mute. You cool with that?
That's unacceptable.
Well, tough titty, that's how I roll. So tell me about your new job as branch manager.
Well, it's a fresh start for the Scottish Labour Party. It's about bringing people together, leaving the disagreements of the referendum and the division in September, for that one day in September behind.
Barely 10 seconds, Your Holiness. Stop talking, Jim, no one can hear you. It wasn't... Oh look, you can be silenced. Huh. It wasn't just one day in September. Labour campaigned for 2 years side by side with the Tories, telling lies to the people of Scotland. After that, it's actually quite funny when Labour accused the SNP of being Tory collaborators. Your lying to lamppost tour was 100 days too long. Here's you with a Tory councillor. And again we are smiling with a Tory MSP. And then with that rarest of beasts in Scotland, a Tory MP. I mean, who exactly is it you're trying to fool, Jim?
There's some people who sat out the 2011 Scottish election who traditionally have voted Labour in general elections but who voted yes in the referendum. I'm going to work really very hard to reach out to those folk.
So you're not going to try and reach out to everyone in Scotland?
No, they're gone for good.
You're pinning all your hopes of the election on convincing a few thousand people to forget about headlines like this?
I don't think anyone understands that logic. The only impact of voting SNP is that people may by accident end up by handing the keys back to Downing Street to David Cameron.
Whoopsie, that's not true either. If you examine the voting records of the general elections over the years, the Tories have been most successful when the SNP had their lowest turnout at the polls. But even more surprising is that when Labour got its biggest victories, votes for the SNP nearly doubled.
Any seat the SNP win, it's not going to be from the Conservative Party.
Did David Mundell defect to the UKIP and nobody told us? Next you'll be telling us you're not a unionist.
I am my own man.
Right, let's move on. Tell me about your plans to renew Trident.
I want rid of nuclear weapons.
You want rid of nukes by making more nukes?
I want the minimum credible nuclear deterrent.
Sorry, Jim, but there's no such thing as a credible nuclear deterrent. It's like saying having more guns will prevent gun-related crime. You want rid of nuclear weapons? Then stop giving hundreds of billions to arms dealers to make the bloody things. How about the bedroom tax? Ian Duncan Smith reckons it's fair, but wee Eddie Millibland says Labour will repeal it if they get any government.
That's not the case. Ian and I have got the same view, and we supported it going through the Parliament, and we wouldn't reverse that policy.
Is this working? Huh. Must be rare honesty. Just the other week there, the Scottish Government introduced free school meals for primary school children under the age of 8, and it was attacked by your own education spokesman Ian Gray. That gives us the impression you are against the policy and will repeal it if you're elected to Holyrood.
What Ian Gray was sensibly doing was pointing out that at a time of great difficulty, it's pointing out the pressures that the Scottish Government faces in its budget and how this money would be redistributed.
Aye, we're all very aware of how under pressure Scotland's budget is, but let's look at how you want to redistribute it. Rather than feeding kids, you want to pour millions into the oil industry. That's what you said, right? The Scottish Government should start a resilience fund, sounds a bit like oil fund, to bail out the oil industry. Oil prices drops, their enormous profits take a dive, so they'll lay off workers and change the terms and conditions of their workforce to cut their wages bill, and taxpayers pick up the tab. It's practically the same as paying people tax credits because their bosses don't pay them a living wage, and then giving tax breaks to those same employers. I mean, you were Secretary of State for Scotland in 2009, the last time the oil price was $50 a barrel. You didn't call for a resilience fund then. And the economy was in an absolute state thanks to Labour failing to regulate the banks. But it's 2015 now, you got your no vote, Scotland isn't independent, and so the North Sea oil and its revenues are a matter for Westminster. So if it's alright with you, we'll spend our under pressure budget feeding our kids.
We're not going to reverse that policy, and we supported it in the Scottish Parliament.
No, you didn't. Your Labour MSPs voted against the motion. Every single one of them, because they didn't like how it was worded. So if you're willing to lie about that, why should we believe you won't cut free school meals? Just what exactly is it you hope to gain by lying repeatedly to the voters of Scotland?
Power and influence the Scottish Labour Party.
Wow, I'm astonished. Deputy Dugdale says she's proud of Labour's past. Would you say the same?
I agree with Kez.
So the scandal of PFI, the Iraq war and the lies that started it, voting against the Iraq inquiry, the piss-poor regulations of the banks, burying bad news on 9/11, MPs' expenses scandal, the deal with Gaddafi, arms to Saudi Arabia, cash for honours, cash for Formula 1, flogging off the gold, sleaze, inequality, 6 council homes in 4 years. Are you kidding? It's quite horrendous for a supposedly socialist party.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone that watches you do these interviews knows that you usually go on and on without saying anything of substance. Some have claimed you have learned to breathe through your ears from years of arse licking. Care to comment?
I think that's the biggest issue in British politics and in Scottish politics.
Okay, final question. How many members do Labour have north of the border?
It's about 190,000 in Scotland.
You've blown up my machine. What the... This is ruined. You just hit 12.5 on the bullshit scale. Do one, you min-slinging tollyhead. God almighty, this is wrecked. Oh, I was hoping to franchise this thing. Never mind. You know, these things do exist, you know. They're known as interviewers, journalists. You know, the people that bring us the news. The trouble is they aren't very good these days. They don't tend to challenge lies when they're told by the likes of Jim, and so allow the public to be misled by lies like a vote for the SNP is a vote for the Tories. It's a lie as old as the SNP let Thatcher in. There were 11 SNP MPs, but 13 Liberals voted against Labour in '79, as well as 5 Ulster Unionists, 1 Independent, 1 United Ulster Unionist, 1 Democratic Unionist. Labour lost by 1 vote. Some say the reason for blaming the SNP was that the SNP were getting revenge for the 40% rule in the devolution referendum that year. But there's a much simpler explanation. It's because Labour were shit. I mean, we've shown it time and again that how Scotland votes rarely affects which party forms a government at Westminster. But now Labour in Scotland, as well as blaming the SNP for everything including the collapse of the oil price, which they've no control over, are going to blame the people of Scotland if there's a hung parliament in May. And it's not just here. In Wales, a vote for Plaid Cymru is a vote for the Tories. In England, a vote for the Greens is a vote for the Tories. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If Labour can't get a majority out of the 533 MPs elected in England, then that is not Scotland's fault. Especially when we only have 59. And for anyone that says, would you prefer the Tories to get back in? As a reason for voting Labour, it's either us or the Tories is pathetic, because it denies me my right to a free vote. And if I'm not free to vote for the candidates in the party that best represents the ideals I hold dear, then I'm not truly free. It's time to bring an end to this business as usual. Labour are only interested in power for themselves. I'm voting for power from Westminster for the people of Scotland. This May, vote responsibly.